The icy wind shrieked across the ancient stone battlements of Fortress Valdor, bearing echoes of sorrow through the mountain ranges of the Transylvanian wilderness. Within the age-old stronghold, flames wavered in ornate bronze holders, throwing elongated shadows that moved upon the stone surfaces like specters unwilling to depart. Queen Seraphine of Valdor stood perfectly still before an elaborate looking glass in her private quarters. Her image, a privilege denied to most of her species, gazed back at her with amber eyes that had observed millennia drift by like falling snow. Her porcelain-luminescent complexion appeared to shimmer in the firelight, a stark contrast against her scarlet mouth and silver hair that flowed down her spine like liquid starlight. 9 evenings had elapsed since King Marcus, sovereign of the undead, had perished in combat. 9 evenings of emptiness in a fortress once resonating with his authoritative voice. 9 evenings without sustenance, a perilous condition for someone of her strength and ancestry. "My lady," a hesitant voice shattered the stillness. A young attendant appeared at the threshold, gaze lowered, her pulse racing like a caged sparrow. "The assembly requests your attendance." Seraphine's mouth opened slightly, exposing the graceful tips of her canines. "Inform them I shall attend when the lunar body reaches its peak, not a moment sooner." The attendant curtsied and withdrew, her steps dissolving into the maze-like passages. Seraphine returned her focus to the mirror, placing upon her head the platinum-barbed diadem, an emblem of her sovereign heritage. Suspended from her throat was the timeless sapphire amulet, rumored to hold the initial droplet of blood ever tasted by the founder of her lineage. Her mind wandered to Marcus, his midnight locks, his burgundy gaze, the manner in which his voice had directed legions and awakened something dormant within her soul. For more than 4 centuries, they had commanded the darkness together, establishing partnerships with neighboring vampire clans, preserving the fragile equilibrium between their domain and the realm of mortals. Now he had departed, leaving her to govern in solitude. The Blood Assembly was already positioning themselves like scavengers, questioning whether a bereaved queen could sustain authority over the ancestral lands. As the complete moon ascended high above the fortress towers, Seraphine moved through the hallways, her ebony silk dress flowing behind her, like the essence of mortality itself. Attendants and sentries bowed profoundly, their eyes turned away, an expression of both reverence and terror. The assembly hall grew quiet as she made her entrance. 7 vampire patriarchs, each signifying one of the prominent bloodlines, observed her with measured expressions. Their pallid countenances revealed nothing, but Seraphine could perceive their intentions, their uncertainty, their aspirations, their craving for dominance. "Distinguished lords," she addressed them, her voice gentle yet bearing the authority of ages. "I comprehend your apprehensions concerning the steadiness of our territory, but understand clearly, Marcus's passing does not diminish my entitlement to the throne. If circumstances have changed, it fortifies my determination." The most senior among them, Count Dominic, inclined forward. His countenance resembled ancient parchment, his eyes steel-gray with years. "My queen, with complete respect, the Highland clans become increasingly restive. They honored Marcus's power. Without his presence, without his influence," Seraphine interjected, her amber eyes blazing with immediate rage. "They shall discover they must honor mine." The atmosphere in the chamber seemed to plummet. Vessels of crimson wine upon the surface crystallized with ice, and the fires in the hearth weakened, as if retreating from her fury. This represented the capability of the primordial bloodline, the capacity to manipulate the natural forces themselves. "King Marcus shall receive the customary rites on the following evening," she continued, her self-control restored. "Until that moment, I desired to mourn in privacy." After dismissing the assembly, Seraphine returned to her quarters. The craving within her intensified, more demanding. She had abstained from feeding since Marcus's passing, a hazardous state for any vampire, particularly for one of royal lineage. The bloodthirst would soon impair her reasoning if left unquenched. Yet she found herself unable to feed. It seemed like a betrayal, though she could not explain why. As the midnight hour drew near, unease drove her from her chamber. Incapable of enduring the limitations of the fortress walls any longer, she departed through a concealed corridor known solely to herself and Marcus. The darkness welcomed her like a familiar companion as she proceeded to the royal crypts, positioned within the fortress gardens. The stone sepulchre gleamed beneath the moonlight, pristine and pure as ivory. Crimson roses flourished around it, an uncommon variety that flowered exclusively in earth combined with vampire blood. Their fragrant metallic aroma saturated the atmosphere. As Seraphine approached the burial chamber where Marcus now lay, she positioned her hand upon the frigid stone, sensing the primordial symbols etched into its exterior, safeguards against those who might desecrate a vampire sovereign's perpetual slumber. Even in mortality, their species required protections. The improper individuals could utilize a vampire's remnants for sinister sorcery, or worse, reanimation rituals that restored only a phantom of what previously existed. "My beloved," she murmured, her voice fracturing, "how shall I rule in your absence?" The breeze murmured through the garden, bearing the fragrance of soil and deterioration, and something else, something mortal. Warm flowing blood nearby. Seraphine turned, her perceptions intensified by hunger. That was when she observed her. A figure lay collapsed at the distant section of the burial chamber, partially concealed by the darkness of a mourning angel sculpture. A woman. Human. The curve of her expectant abdomen visible even in the obscurity. And she was weeping over Marcus's resting place. Seraphine moved with supernatural velocity, traversing the distance to the fallen woman in under a heartbeat. The aroma of mortal blood overpowered her senses. Sweet, metallic, and infused with fear. After 9 evenings without sustenance, the vampire queen's hunger clawed at her interior like a creature demanding release. Her amber eyes transformed, darkening to copper, as threads of scarlet expanded beneath her pale complexion. The ancient vampiric malediction responded to the nearness of prey, a metamorphosis as timeless as existence itself. The woman lay unconscious, her respiration shallow. She wore what had previously been elegant linen garments, now shredded and stained with earth and blood. Her auburn hair cascaded across the stone steps of the burial chamber, forming a striking contrast against the pale stone. The moonlight exposed her countenance, refined features damaged by exhaustion and terror, even in unconsciousness. Seraphine knelt beside her, resisting the compulsion to feed. The woman's heartbeat throbbed like percussion in her ears, each rhythm transmitting waves of hunger through the vampire queen's form. It would be remarkably simple. One rapid movement and the hunger would be gratified, but something restrained her. The woman's curved abdomen rose and descended with each respiration. A second, more rapid heartbeat perceptible beneath, the infant within. "What circumstances bring you to my husband's resting place, mortal?" Seraphine whispered, observing dried tears on the woman's features. "What association could you conceivably have to Marcus?" Suspicion developed like a toxic blossom in Seraphine's consciousness. For centuries, she had been aware of Marcus's occasional fascination with the mortal realm. He had consistently returned to her, reassured her of his commitment. But in those instances of doubt that afflict even immortal hearts, she questioned, had there been confidences? Concealed liaisons? Could this woman be carrying Marcus's offspring? The very contemplation made the night atmosphere crackle with force. The crimson roses surrounding the burial chamber withered abruptly, their petals descending like cinders as Seraphine's sentiments affected the surroundings around her. The expectant woman stirred, moaning softly in discomfort. Fresh blood trickled from an injury on her forearm, not critical, but sufficient to transmit another wave of hunger through Seraphine.
"My lady," a voice summoned from the garden pathway. Seraphine turned to see Lucien, commander of her guard, approaching with prudence. His pallid features revealed his own vampiric essence, though his lineage was not as primordial as hers. "I perceived your distress," he stated, bowing moderately. The roses in the fortress withered simultaneously. "I recognized something was incorrect. Assist me with her," Seraphine commanded, rising gracefully to her feet. "Transport her to the eastern wing, the physician's chambers." Lucien's expression betrayed his astonishment. "A mortal, my lady, inside the fortress perimeter. The assembly responds to me." Seraphine severed him off, her voice bearing the edge of authority that could bend lesser vampires to her determination. This woman was grieving at Marcus's burial chamber. "I desire to comprehend why." Lucien nodded, lifting the unconscious woman with ease. As they proceeded through the garden back toward the fortress's secret entrance, Seraphine noticed something fall from the woman's hand, a small locket bearing the royal insignia of Morvain, a mortal kingdom to the east. She retrieved it, the metal frigid against her fingertips. The enigma intensified. Within the hour, the woman rested on a bed in the physician's chambers. The quarters were infrequently utilized. Vampires had minimal necessity for medical attention, but it was maintained, prepared for mortal servants who occasionally required care. Celeste, an ancient vampire who had served as a physician for centuries, attended to the woman's injuries. Her weathered hands moved with practiced precision as she cleansed and dressed the lacerations on the woman's arms and legs. "She is depleted, undernourished, and has suffered blood loss," Celeste reported, "but the infant appears resilient. Their heartbeats synchronize, a positive indication." Seraphine stood at the window, observing the moon as it commenced its decline toward the horizon. Dawn would arrive in several hours, compelling her to withdraw to the protected inner chambers of the fortress. "She has journeyed considerable distance," Celeste continued, examining the woman's feet. "The calluses and injuries suggest multiple days of walking, escaping from something, I would estimate. Or someone," Seraphine contemplated, turning the Morvain locket over in her hand. "The kingdom of Morvain lies 6 days' ride from here, longer by foot. What would compel a pregnant noblewoman to abandon her homeland and seek refuge at the resting place of a vampire sovereign?" The woman stirred, her eyelids fluttering. Seraphine approached the bed, her movements silent as darkness. When the woman's eyes opened completely, Seraphine found herself gazing into depths of jade green. Those eyes widened with instantaneous terror upon seeing the vampire queen, a natural reaction of prey recognizing predator. "Remain calm," Seraphine commanded, using just sufficient mental influence to pacify the woman without overwhelming her fragile mortal mind. "You are protected for the moment, but you owe me explanations." The woman's hand instinctively moved to shield her swollen abdomen. "My infant," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "Your offspring is unharmed," Seraphine assured her, maintaining a careful distance. The aroma of the woman's blood still tempted her, but her sovereign discipline held the hunger at bay. "Reveal to me your name and why you were at my husband's burial chamber." The woman swallowed hard, her gaze darting around the unfamiliar quarters. "I am Eveline," she finally stated, "Princess of Morvain, or I was until I escaped." "And what brought you to King Marcus's resting place?" Seraphine pressed, her amber eyes narrowing. Eveline's expression changed, softening with what appeared to be genuine sorrow. "He rescued me," she said simply. "I came to offer my respects. I didn't realize," she hesitated. "I didn't comprehend what he truly was until this moment. Until I saw you." A tense silence filled the chamber. Celeste quietly excused herself, sensing the delicacy of the moment. "Explain," Seraphine demanded, her voice deceptively soft. "How did the sovereign of vampires come to rescue a mortal princess? And when?" Eveline's hand trembled as she reached for a cup of water beside the bed. Seraphine made no move to assist her. "It was nearly 8 months ago," Eveline began, her voice steadying as she spoke. "I had been wed to King Roland of Morvain, a political arrangement. He was brutal. When he discovered I was with child, his brutality intensified. He spoke of utilizing my infant as an instrument, raising them to conquer adjacent kingdoms." Seraphine remained silent, listening attentively as the mortal woman continued her account. "I escaped during a tempest. The sentries were distracted, and I seized my opportunity. I journeyed eastward for days through woodlands and across war-ravaged territories." Eveline's eyes grew distant with the memory. "That's where I encountered him, your husband, though I did not recognize who or what he was then. The eastern sky was beginning to lighten imperceptibly. Seraphine felt the approaching dawn like pressure on her shoulders. Soon she would need to retreat from its lethal rays. But first, she needed to hear the remainder of Eveline's account. If you're enjoying the story, hit the like button, leave a comment, and tell me where you're watching from. I'd love to reply to you. The first hint of dawn's approach prickled at Seraphine's skin, a subtle burning sensation that warned of the coming light. She moved to draw the heavy velvet curtains across the windows, plunging the chamber into darkness, relieved only by the soft glow of candles. "Continue," Seraphine commanded, turning back to Eveline. The mortal woman clutched the bedsheets tighter, her knuckles white with tension. "I was traversing a battlefield," Eveline began again, her voice steadier now, an ancient one, where the conflict had long since moved on, but mortality still lingered in the atmosphere. It was nighttime, and I was exhausted, famished. Her hand moved unconsciously to her abdomen. I thought I perceived wolves in the distance, then men's voices, soldiers, mercenaries from Morvain sent to retrieve me. Seraphine circled the bed slowly, her movements fluid and predatory. "And Marcus appeared," she prompted, her voice betraying nothing of the storm brewing inside her. Eveline nodded. Like a phantom materialized. He came without warning or sound. One moment I was alone, hiding behind an abandoned wagon, and the next, she closed her eyes briefly, reliving the memory. He stood before me, imposing and commanding. His eyes were like dark burgundy, and he wore a cloak that seemed to merge with the darkness itself. The description sent a pang through Seraphine's chest. She knew that cloak, woven from a rare fabric that absorbed light rather than reflecting it, perfect for a creature of the night. The soldiers were advancing. Eveline continued. He offered me his hand and said, "Place your trust in me if you desire to survive." I had no alternative. He guided me through the darkness at impossible velocity to a small dwelling deep in the forest. It was as if he knew every tree, every path, even in the complete blackness. Seraphine's suspicions began to shift. This did sound like Marcus, his methods, his commanding presence. But why would he assist a mortal woman, an expectant one no less? "He kept me concealed there for 4 days," Eveline said. "He brought nourishment, fresh water, even remedies for my injuries. He never remained long, appearing only at night. He said it was safer that way." "Did he feed from you?" Seraphine asked sharply, her amber eyes flashing. Eveline looked confused, then horrified as understanding dawned. "No, never. Never. He didn't even touch me after that first night. He maintained his distance, always respectful, almost protective like a father." The vampire queen's tension eased slightly. Marcus had always possessed a strange sense of honor, even by mortal standards. In their centuries together, she had witnessed his occasional acts of compassion, rare but significant departures from the typical coldness of their kind. "On the 4th night, he brought me a chart and provisions," Eveline continued. "He marked a safe route southward away from Morvain's reach. He told me of a location where I might find sanctuary, a monastery known for sheltering those in need. When I asked his name, he simply said, 'I am Marcus, and that is all you need comprehend.'" Seraphine's breath caught. He had given his true name, a dangerous gift among their kind, where names held power. "Before I departed, I gave him this," Eveline said, noticing the locket in Seraphine's hand. "It was the only thing of value I still possessed. He refused it initially, but I insisted he accept it as payment for his kindness." Seraphine examined the locket again, noting the worn edges where Marcus's fingers must have traced the design countless times. Had he carried it as a reminder of his unexpected act of compassion? "I journeyed for months," Eveline said, staying at the monastery for a time, then moving on when I feared discovery. "When I heard whispers of a great sovereign's passing in these lands, something drew me here. I didn't realize he was," she hesitated. "A vampire," Seraphine finished for her. "A creature of the night, the immortal ruler of these territories for over 8 centuries. Eveline paled but nodded. "I came to offer my respects, to thank him one last time. I never imagined his burial chamber would be guarded by—" Her voice trailed off. "His widow," Seraphine supplied, her tone sharp as a blade. "His queen." The tension in the chamber thickened. Seraphine could hear Eveline's heartbeat quickening, the infant within her responding with its own rapid pulse. The sound stirred her hunger once more. "You believe I was his lover," Eveline said suddenly, her jade eyes meeting Seraphine's amber ones directly. "That this infant is his." The boldness of the statement surprised Seraphine. Few mortals dared speak so plainly to a vampire queen. "The thought crossed my consciousness," Seraphine admitted, revealing her fangs slightly. "It would not be the first time a vampire sired offspring with a mortal woman. Such children are rare, but not unknown. Half-immortals with unique abilities and unique dangers." "This infant is fully human," Eveline insisted. "Its father is the brutal king I escaped from. Marcus was my protector, nothing more." Seraphine studied her countenance, searching for signs of deception. She had lived long enough to recognize when mortals lied. Their scent changed subtly, their pupils dilated, their skin flushed with increased blood flow. Eveline showed none of these signs. "I believe you," Seraphine said finally, surprising even herself with the admission. Relief flooded Eveline's face, but it was short-lived. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. "Will you terminate my life?" The question hung in the atmosphere between them. By vampire law, Seraphine had every right to drain the woman completely simply for trespassing on sacred ground. Mortals who learned of their existence rarely lived to share the knowledge. Yet Marcus had protected this woman. He had revealed his name to her and kept her safe. There must have been a reason. "No," Seraphine decided. "For now, you will remain here under my protection." Eveline's expression showed both relief and confusion. "Why would you assist me? I am nothing to you." "You are something to Marcus," Seraphine replied simply. "That makes you something to me." The truth was more complex. In 9 nights of grief, this was the first connection to Marcus that felt real, a final act of compassion from her husband, revealed through the words of a stranger. It was like hearing his voice one last time, seeing his intentions through another's eyes. "Rest now," Seraphine said, moving toward the door. "Dawn approaches, and with it, I must retreat to my chambers. Guards will be posted outside. Do not attempt to leave this chamber." As she reached the doorway, Eveline called out to her, "My lady." Seraphine paused, looking back over her shoulder. "Thank you," Eveline said simply, "for believing me." Seraphine gave a slight nod before closing the door behind her. In the corridor, she summoned Lucien, who had been waiting at a respectful distance. "Post guards, loyal ones," she instructed. "The woman is not to be harmed, and send Celeste to check on her throughout the day." "Yes, my lady," Lucien bowed. "And what of the assembly?" "They will question the presence of a mortal within the fortress perimeter." Seraphine's expression hardened. "The assembly serves at my pleasure, Commander. They would do well to remember that." As she made her way to her private chambers deep within the fortress, where no sunlight could penetrate, Seraphine's thoughts remained on Eveline's account. The image of Marcus, her Marcus, acting as protector to an expectant mortal woman, was both strange and oddly fitting. In their final years together, she had sensed a change in him, a growing weariness with the endless politics of vampire society, a questioning of their nature and purpose. Had assisting Eveline been part of that change? Seraphine reached her sanctuary as the first deadly rays of sunlight crept over the horizon. The heavy stone door sealed behind her, locking out the day. As she prepared for her daylight rest, she placed the Morvain locket beside her bed, a tangible link to Marcus's final days. For the first time since his passing, she felt a sense of purpose stirring within her immortal heart. Protecting Eveline and her infant would be her tribute to Marcus's memory, a continuation of his final act of compassion. As sleep claimed her, Seraphine's last thought was of Marcus's words, spoken centuries ago when she questioned why he sometimes spared those he could easily destroy. Even creatures of darkness must occasionally remember what it means to be something more than monsters. When darkness fell again, Seraphine awakened with a sharp clarity that came only after proper rest. For the first time in 10 nights, the crushing weight of grief had lifted slightly, replaced by curiosity and purpose. She dressed in formal attire, a gown of deep ruby velvet with ebony lace trimmings, adorned with sapphires that caught the candlelight like droplets of frozen twilight. Tonight was the official mourning ceremony for Marcus, and the fortress would be filled with vampire nobility from across the realm. As she fastened the platinum-barbed diadem upon her silver hair, a soft knock interrupted her preparations. "Enter," she commanded. Celeste appeared, bowing deeply. The ancient physician's countenance betrayed concern. "My lady, I've been attending to the mortal woman as instructed." "And?" Seraphine prompted, studying her own reflection. The hunger still lingered in her eyes, amber irises rimmed with copper fire. "She grows weaker," Celeste reported. "The journey and her condition have taken a toll. She needs nourishment beyond what common food provides. Her blood thins and the infant draws heavily upon her strength." Seraphine turned from the mirror, her expression thoughtful. "What do you suggest?" "A small amount of vampire blood would restore her quickly," Celeste said cautiously. Not enough to transform her, merely to heal. The suggestion was unorthodox, bordering on taboo. Vampire blood was sacred, given only to those deemed worthy of transformation. Using it merely as medicine for a mortal was practically unheard of. The Blood Assembly would view such an act as sacrilege. Seraphine contemplated, though not dismissively. Celeste's ancient eyes held steady. The Blood Assembly need not know everything that occurs within these walls, my lady. A slight smile curved Seraphine's lips. Your loyalty to the throne has always transcended convention, Celeste. Prepare what is needed. I will attend to it personally after the ceremony. As Celeste departed, Seraphine finished her preparations and made her way to the Great Hall. The fortress had been transformed for the morning ritual. Ebony velvet draped the walls, and hundreds of black candles cast an ethereal glow across the gathered assembly. Vampire nobles from every territory stood in solemn formation, their pallid faces like marble sculptures in the flickering light. The Blood Assembly occupied the front row, 7 ancient vampires whose lineages traced back to the original clans. Count Dominic, the eldest, stepped forward as Seraphine entered. My lady, he intoned, bowing with precise formality. We are gathered to honor the passage of King Marcus of Valdor, Lord of the Eastern Territories, Master of the Night Hunt, Keeper of the Blood Covenant. Seraphine acknowledged him with a regal nod, taking her place before the obsidian throne. Marcus's throne beside hers remained, empty, draped in ebony silk. The ceremony proceeded according to ancient tradition. Each assembly member spoke of Marcus's accomplishments, his centuries of rule, his victories in the vampire wars. Crimson wine flowed freely as toasts were made to his memory. Throughout it all, Seraphine maintained her composure, though she noted the calculating glances exchanged among certain nobles. Already they were forming alliances, positioning themselves in the power vacuum left by Marcus's passing. As the ritual neared its conclusion, Count Dominic approached the throne once more. As is tradition, my lady, the assembly requests private audience following the ceremony. There are matters of succession to discuss. Of course, Seraphine agreed, her voice betraying nothing of her suspicions. In the assembly chamber, 1 hour hence. After the assembly dispersed, Seraphine slipped away through a hidden passage. She had one task to complete before meeting with the assembly. In the physician's chambers, she found Eveline sitting upright in bed. Some color returned to her features. The mortal woman tensed visibly as Seraphine entered, still uncomfortable in the presence of a vampire despite their previous conversation. Your ceremony? Is it concluded? Eveline asked hesitantly. The public observance? Yes, Seraphine replied, gliding closer to the bed. You appear better than you did at dawn. Eveline nodded. The physician, Celeste. She's been kind, but she says I need something more if I'm to regain my strength. Yes, Seraphine confirmed, sitting gracefully on the edge of the bed. And I've come to provide it. She extended her wrist, a pale azure vein visible beneath the translucent skin. With a quick motion of her other hand, she extended one sharp nail and sliced the vein open. Dark blood, darker than mortal blood with an iridescent quality, welled from the wound. Eveline's eyes widened with alarm. I don't comprehend. A few drops of my blood will heal you more effectively than any medicine, Seraphine explained calmly. It will not change you, but it will strengthen you and your infant. Eveline looked horrified. Is this how one becomes like you? No, Seraphine said. The transformation requires a complete exchange. Your blood for mine, followed by mortality and rebirth. This is merely medicine. 3 drops, no more. Eveline hesitated, her hand moving protectively to her swollen abdomen. Will it affect my infant? It will ensure its survival, Seraphine said simply. The choice is yours, but I would not offer if there were danger to the infant. After a long moment, Eveline nodded. Very well. Seraphine held her wrist over a silver goblet, allowing 3 drops of her ancient blood to fall into the water it contained. The liquid swirled, turning faintly pink. Drink, she instructed, offering the goblet to Eveline. The mortal woman took it with trembling hands and swallowed the contents quickly. Almost immediately, color flooded her features. Her breathing deepened and her posture straightened as strength returned to her limbs. The effect is remarkable, Eveline whispered, touching her face in wonder. My bloodline is among the oldest and most powerful, Seraphine explained, watching as her own wrist wound closed itself. Even diluted, it carries considerable strength. A comfortable silence fell between them, a surprising development that neither had anticipated. What will happen to me when I'm fully recovered? Eveline finally asked. Seraphine considered the question. That depends partly on you. What were your plans before you came to Marcus's burial chamber? To reach the southern coast, Eveline said. To find passage across the sea beyond Morvaine's reach, somewhere my infant could grow up in safety. Seraphine nodded. A sound strategy. When you're strong enough, I will provide you with what you need to continue your journey. Eveline looked surprised. You would assist me in escaping? Marcus chose to protect you, Seraphine replied. I honor his choice. Before Eveline could respond, a sharp knock came at the door. Lucien entered, his expression grave. My lady, the assembly awaits you. They grow impatient. Seraphine rose smoothly. Then we mustn't keep them waiting. Continue your rest, she added to Eveline. We will speak more tomorrow. The assembly chamber was ominously silent as Seraphine entered. The 7 ancient vampires rose in respect, but resumed their seats without the customary words of fealty. My lady, Count Dominic began, his voice carrying centuries of diplomatic cunning, we come to a delicate matter. There are rumors circulating among the court, whispers of a mortal woman brought within the fortress perimeter. Seraphine's expression remained impassive. Is the Queen's hospitality now subject to assembly approval, Count? When it concerns a breach of our most sacred laws? Yes, Countess Helena interjected. The only female assembly member besides Seraphine herself, Helena had never hidden her ambition for greater power. Mortals who learn of our existence must either be transformed or eliminated. It has been our way for millennia. The law provides exceptions, Seraphine countered smoothly, at the monarch's discretion. Even so, Lord Victor added, his skeletal fingers forming a steeple before him, we must question the wisdom of such an exception at this particular time. With King Marcus's passing so recent, the nobility watches closely for signs of weakness in leadership. The implication was clear. Her decision to shelter Eveline was being interpreted as sentimentality, a dangerous flaw in a vampire ruler. I appreciate the assembly's concern, Seraphine said, her voice carrying a subtle edge of power that made the candles flicker. But the woman remains under my protection for now. She has information valuable to the throne. Count Dominic leaned forward. What information could a mortal possibly possess that would warrant such risk? Seraphine met his gaze directly. She was aided by Marcus himself in the days before his passing. She may provide insight into his final movements and intentions. This revelation caused a stir among the assembly members. Marcus's passing had come suddenly during what should have been a routine diplomatic mission to the Western territories. The circumstances remained unclear even to Seraphine. If this is true, Lord Victor mused, then her presence is indeed valuable, temporarily. Precisely, Seraphine agreed. Once I have extracted all useful information, I will determine her fate according to our laws. The assembly seemed mollified by this explanation, though Seraphine noted the skepticism lingering in Countess Helena's eyes. There is another matter, Count Dominic continued. The Highland clans have sent envoys. They wish to renegotiate certain territorial agreements now that Marcus has departed. Seraphine's eyes flashed dangerously. Nothing has changed. The treaties remain in force. They believe otherwise, Lord Victor said. They arrive in 4 nights' time. It would be advantageous if your mortal guest were dealt with before then to avoid unnecessary complications. The threat beneath the suggestion was unmistakable. The assembly was setting a deadline. 4 nights is sufficient, Seraphine conceded, rising to indicate the meeting's conclusion. The matter will be resolved to the assembly's satisfaction. As she swept from the chamber, Seraphine's mind raced with possibilities. She had bought time, but not much. The assembly would expect Eveline's execution or transformation within 4 days. Neither option aligned with her promise to honor Marcus's protection of the woman. As she reached her private chamber, a strange sensation overcame her, a cold presence, familiar yet impossible. For just a moment, she felt as though Marcus himself stood beside her, his spectral hand guiding hers as she reached for the Morvain locket. "What are you trying to tell me, my beloved?" she whispered to the empty chamber. The locket seemed to grow colder in her palm, the metal gleaming with unnatural brightness in the candlelight. Turning it over, she noticed something she had overlooked before. Tiny runes engraved around the edge, nearly invisible to mortal eyes. Ancient vampire script from before the modern clans formed. And within those runes, a message only she could understand. Seraphine's fingers trembled as she traced the minute runes etched into the locket's edge. The ancient vampire script was rarely used in modern times, a dead language known only to the oldest bloodlines. That Marcus had used it here was deliberate, a message meant for her eyes alone. Slowly, she translated the tiny markings, her lips moving silently as she deciphered each symbol. "The offspring of 2 thrones shall unite realms, safeguard the pure blood, for in it flows our salvation." Seraphine sank onto her throne-like chair, the locket clutched tightly in her hand. This was no casual message. These words carried the weight of prophecy, the kind that had guided vampire destiny for millennia. But what did it mean? Eveline's infant was of royal blood through its father, the brutal king of Morvain. What was the second throne? And how could a mortal infant offer salvation to the vampire race? A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. "Enter," she commanded, quickly concealing the locket within the folds of her gown. Celeste glided into the chamber, her ancient eyes immediately sensing Seraphine's disturbance. "Forgive the intrusion, my lady. I thought you should know that the mortal woman, Eveline, has responded remarkably to your blood. Her strength returns at an unusual rate." Seraphine nodded, unsurprised. The blood of the Valdor line has always carried exceptional power. "Indeed," Celeste agreed, hesitating before adding, "but there is something else, something unexpected." Seraphine's attention sharpened. "Explain." "The infant within her womb, its heartbeat has changed. It beats with a rhythm I've heard only once before, many centuries ago." Celeste's voice dropped to a whisper. "When a hybrid offspring was born to the Eastern Territories. A hybrid, half vampire, half human." The revelation struck Seraphine like lightning. She rose swiftly, crossing the chamber in a blur of motion. "That's impossible," she hissed. "She carries a mortal infant. Its father is the king of Morvain." "So she believes," Celeste replied carefully. "But the blood never lies, my lady, and what I hear in that infant's heartbeat is the echo of our kind, faint but unmistakable." Seraphine paced the chamber, her mind racing. "If what you say is true, then Marcus," she couldn't complete the thought. Had her husband betrayed her after all? Had he lain with this mortal woman and sired offspring? No. Eveline's account had contained no deception. Seraphine would have sensed it. The woman truly believed her infant belonged to the mortal king. "There is another possibility," Celeste suggested gently, "one that aligns with ancient lore." Seraphine turned to her sharply. "Speak plainly." "The sanguis transfer," Celeste said, "the blood transfer prophecy. It speaks of a time when vampire essence might pass without the traditional bonds of physical union through an act of pure protection or sacrifice." "A myth," Seraphine dismissed, though uncertainty crept into her voice. "A story told to fledglings." "All myths contain seeds of truth," Celeste countered, "and we have lived long enough to see many impossibilities become reality." Seraphine's hand moved unconsciously to the hidden locket, the offspring of 2 thrones. Could it be that Marcus had inadvertently fulfilled an ancient prophecy by protecting Eveline? Had his blood somehow mingled with that of the unborn infant through some mystical means? "I must see for myself," Seraphine decided. "Prepare the chamber of whispers." Celeste's eyes widened. "The blood ritual. It hasn't been performed in centuries. The risk is mine to take," Seraphine finished, firmly. "Do as I command." As Celeste departed, Seraphine returned to the window, gazing out at the moonlit landscape. The Highland Mountains loomed in the distance, the direction from which the vampire envoys would arrive in 4 nights' time. Time was running short. If Eveline's infant truly carried vampire blood, Marcus's blood, it would explain the mysterious message and change everything. The assembly could not be permitted to discover this truth until she understood its full implications. Deep beneath the fortress, in chambers unknown to all but the royal bloodline and their most trusted servants, the Chamber of Whispers awaited. A circular chamber carved from obsidian, its walls etched with the complete history of vampire kind dating back to the first blood. Seraphine descended the winding staircase, her footsteps echoing in the ancient passageway. At the bottom, Celeste had prepared the chamber as instructed. Ebony candles burned in bronze holders, casting long shadows across the gleaming floor. In the center stood a stone altar, its surface smoothed by centuries of ritual use. "Bring her," Seraphine commanded. Moments later, Lucienne appeared with Eveline. The mortal woman looked stronger than before, her steps steadier, though fear showed clearly in her eyes as she took in the chamber's ominous appearance. "What is this location?" she whispered. "Why have you brought me here?" Seraphine approached her slowly. "There are questions that require answers, Eveline of Morvain. Questions about your infant." Eveline's hands immediately went to her abdomen in a protective gesture. "My infant has done nothing wrong. No one suggests otherwise," Seraphine assured her. "But there is something unusual about your infant. Something that may explain why Marcus chose to protect you." She gestured to the altar. "Lie down. This will not harm you or your infant. It is merely a way of listening." Eveline hesitated, looking to Celeste for reassurance. The ancient physician nodded. Encouragingly, "The Queen speaks truth. No harm will come to you here." Reluctantly, Eveline climbed onto the altar, lying back against the cold stone. "Close your eyes," Seraphine instructed. "Breathe deeply and try to remain calm." As Eveline obeyed, Seraphine placed her pale hands on either side of the woman's temples. She nodded to Celeste, who began to chant in the ancient vampire tongue, words of power that had not been spoken aloud in centuries. The chamber grew colder as the ritual began. The candle flames turned from yellow-orange to deep azure, casting an eerie glow across the obsidian walls. The runes carved into the stone began to pulse with faint luminescence. Seraphine closed her eyes, allowing her consciousness to sink deeper, beyond the physical realm. Her vampiric senses, already supernaturally acute, sharpened further as the ritual enhanced her perception. First, she perceived Eveline's essence, bright, warm, distinctly human. The woman's life force flowed like a river of golden light, strong but finite. Then, within that river, Seraphine sensed another presence, the infant. What she discovered took her immortal breath away. The unborn infant's essence glowed with dual nature, the warm gold of humanity interwoven with threads of midnight azure, the unmistakable signature of vampire blood. Not dominant enough to make the infant a true hybrid, but present nonetheless. And those midnight threads carried a familiar pattern, one Seraphine had known intimately for centuries, Marcus's blood signature. Yet there was no deception in Eveline's being, no hidden memories of intimacy with Marcus. The mortal woman had spoken truth. Marcus had never touched her in that way. How then had his blood essence passed to the infant? Delving deeper into the mystical connection, Seraphine perceived fragments of memory, not Eveline's, but the infant's pre-conscious impressions. Among them, a moment when Marcus had defended Eveline from attackers. He had been wounded in the skirmish, his immortal blood spilling onto the ground where Eveline had fallen. Blood meeting blood through the earth itself, a connection so rare it had passed into legend. Seraphine withdrew from the trance slowly, opening her amber eyes as the azure flames returned to their natural color. Eveline lay still, breathing steadily, unaware of what had been discovered. "It is, as I suspected," Celeste whispered, awe in her ancient voice. "The sanguis transfer." His blood merged with the infant through an act of protection. Seraphine nodded, helping Eveline to sit up. The mortal woman looked between them anxiously. "What did you see?" she asked. "Is my infant well?" "Your infant is strong," Seraphine assured her, "and special in ways you cannot imagine." "I don't comprehend," Eveline said, confusion evident in her jade eyes. Seraphine considered how much to reveal. The truth was dangerous for Eveline, for the infant, and potentially for the entire vampire realm if the wrong ears heard it. "When Marcus protected you," she began carefully, He was injured defending you from your pursuers. Do you remember this? Eveline nodded slowly. Yes, there was a fight. He moved so quickly I could barely see him. But afterward, his sleeve was torn, and I saw something that frightened me. His wound closed before my eyes. His blood spilled on the ground where you had fallen, Seraphine continued. Your own blood was there too, from your injuries. In that moment, something rare occurred, something spoken of only in our oldest legends. What are you saying? Eveline whispered. Your infant carries a trace of Marcus within it, Seraphine said simply. Not enough to make it anything other than human, but enough to connect it to our bloodline, to my bloodline. Eveline's face paled. But that's not possible. Your husband remains the father, Seraphine assured her. But now your infant carries the protection of the Valdor line as well. It is what our kind calls a blood ward, a mortal under the mystical protection of a vampire lineage. It wasn't the complete truth, but it was safer than revealing the full implications of the Sanguis transfer prophecy. That knowledge would only place Eveline in greater danger. Is that why you brought me here, to discover this? Eveline asked. Yes, Seraphine replied. And now that I know, everything changes. As they left the Chamber of Whispers, Seraphine's mind was already forming a plan. The assembly expected her to eliminate Eveline in 4 nights' time. Instead, she would need to ensure both mother and infant escaped before the Highland envoys arrived. But first, she needed to confirm her suspicions about the locket and the prophecy it contained. For that, she required access to texts so ancient and forbidden that even the Blood Assembly did not know of their existence. In the deepest vault beneath Fortress Valdor, hidden behind illusions and deadly traps, lay the Crimson Archives, Marcus's most closely guarded secret. Only he and Seraphine knew of its location and contents. It was time to uncover the full truth of what Marcus had discovered, and why he had chosen to protect Eveline's unborn infant with his immortal blood. The lowest levels of Fortress Valdor held secrets that had remained undisturbed for centuries. Beneath the dungeons, beyond the ancient catacombs, where the remains of forgotten vampires crumbled to dust, lay passages known only to those of the royal bloodline. Seraphine moved silently through the darkness, her vampiric vision penetrating the gloom. The stone walls here were older than the fortress itself, dating back to a time when the first vampires claimed these lands as their sanctuary. The atmosphere hung heavy with magic, protective enchantments layered over countless generations. At the end of a narrow corridor, she faced what appeared to be a solid wall of ebony stone. No mortal eye could detect the difference between this section and the surrounding rock. But to Seraphine's enhanced senses, the faint outline of a doorway was visible, sealed with blood magic. She drew a slender dagger from her sleeve and sliced her palm without hesitation. As her ancient blood touched the stone, the outline began to glow with a deep scarlet light. Runes appeared across the surface, ancient vampire script that predated even the language of the locket. Blood of Valdor calls to blood, she whispered in the elder tongue. Open to your mistress. The stone melted away, revealing a circular chamber beyond. The Crimson Archives, Marcus's most precious collection. Unlike traditional archives with their rows of shelves, this repository held knowledge in forms far older and stranger. Crystal orbs containing swirling memories lined the walls. Scrolls of human skin inscribed with blood ink rested in niches carved from obsidian. Ancient artifacts, remnants of vampire history that the assembly would have destroyed, stood on pedestals throughout the chamber. And at its center, a lectern carved from bone supported a massive tome bound in leather so dark it seemed to absorb light. The Book of First Blood, the original chronicle of vampire kind. Seraphine approached it reverently. Few had ever laid eyes upon this text, and fewer still could read its contents. The language it contained had died millennia ago, preserved only in the memories of the oldest royal bloodlines. As her fingers touched the cover, the leather seemed to warm beneath her hand, responding to her presence. The book recognized her as Marcus's queen, granting her access to its forbidden knowledge. The pages turned on their own, fluttering like bat wings in the darkness until they settled on a particular section. Seraphine leaned closer, her amber eyes widening as she translated the ancient text. When the darkness grows deepest and our kind faces annihilation, deliverance shall come through unexpected means. The offspring of two thrones, born of mortal flesh but blessed by immortal blood, shall unite the abyss between realms. Neither living nor undead, this offspring shall bear the legacy of both worlds and herald a new era for all bloodlines. Seraphine's fingers trembled as she continued reading. The prophecy was specific and detailed, describing events that aligned perfectly with Eveline's circumstances. The offspring shall be conceived of mortal royalty, but touched by the blood of vampire sovereignty through an act of pure protection. When mortal blood mingles with immortal through the earth itself, the ancient magic awakens. This offspring alone shall possess the power to end the eternal thirst, to free our kind from the curse of endless hunger without destroying our immortal nature. The revelation struck Seraphine like a physical blow. If this prophecy spoke true, Eveline's infant could transform vampire existence itself, ending the need to feed on mortal blood while preserving immortality. Such an offspring would be both salvation and target, revered by some and hunted by others. Marcus must have discovered this prophecy during his final days. It would explain why he had protected Eveline so fiercely, why he had kept her existence secret even from Seraphine herself. He had recognized the potential significance of what had occurred when his blood mixed with that of Eveline and her unborn infant. But there was more. The text continued with a warning. Beware the blood assembly, for they shall seek to prevent this change. Those who profit from our current nature shall hunt the offspring without mercy. Only through the protection of royal blood freely given can the offspring of two thrones survive to fulfill its destiny. Seraphine closed the ancient tome, her mind reeling with implications. The blood assembly, the very vampires who now pressed her to eliminate Eveline, were specifically named as enemies of this prophecy. If they discovered the truth, they would stop at nothing to destroy both mother and infant. The Highland envoys, arriving in 4 nights' time, complicated matters further. If they allied with the assembly, escape would become nearly impossible. She had to move quickly. As Seraphine emerged from the secret archives, sealing it once more with her blood, she found Lucien waiting in the corridor above. "My lady," he bowed, concern evident in his pale features. "The assembly has called an emergency session. They demand your presence immediately." Seraphine's expression betrayed nothing, though alarm coursed through her. "What reason do they give?" "They claim to have new information regarding King Marcus's passing," Lucien replied. "Information that cannot wait until tomorrow night. A trap, perhaps, or genuine news. Either way, she could not refuse without arousing suspicion. "Very well," she said, smoothing her gown. "Lead on." The assembly chamber was lit with crimson candles when Seraphine arrived. All 7 assembly members were present, their ancient faces unreadable in the scarlet light. "My lady," Count Dominic greeted her with a formal bow. "Thank you for joining us at this unusual hour." "You claim to have information about my husband's passing," Seraphine replied coolly, taking her seat at the head of the table. "I assume it must be significant to warrant such urgency." Lord Victor cleared his throat. "Indeed, we have received communication from the Western Territories. It appears King Marcus's passing was not the result of a random attack by hunters as previously believed." Seraphine's attention sharpened. "Explain." Countess Helena slid a sealed parchment across the table. "This arrived by Raven an hour ago. The Western clan's investigation suggests King Marcus was deliberately targeted." Breaking the seal, Seraphine scanned the message written in vampire script. According to the report, Marcus had ventured alone into mortal territory shortly before his passing, behavior consistent with Eveline's account of his protection. When he returned to vampire lands, he was ambushed by a group that seemed to know his movements in advance. "Betrayal," Count Dominic said gravely. "Someone within our court provided information to his killers." Seraphine looked up from the parchment, her amber eyes flashing dangerously. "And have the traitors been identified?" An uncomfortable silence fell over the assembly. Finally, Lord Victor spoke, not conclusively. "However, there are suspicions. The timing is significant," Countess Helena added, her tone deliberately casual. "King Marcus's unusual interest in the mortal territories began approximately 8 months ago, coinciding with the arrival of your guest. The implication was clear. They were suggesting a connection between Eveline and Marcus's passing. A curious coincidence, Seraphine agreed, revealing nothing of what she now knew. Though the woman was hardly in a position to orchestrate such an attack, being both expectant and fleeing for her life, perhaps not directly, Count Dominic conceded, but she could have been a pawn in a larger scheme. We recommend immediate interrogation using traditional methods. Traditional methods meant torture, blood extraction, until the victim revealed every memory and secret. Few mortals survived the process with their minds intact. An interesting suggestion, Seraphine said smoothly. However, my own investigations are already underway. The woman remains under my protection until I determine her role, if any, in these events. Lord Victor leaned forward. With respect, my lady, the Assembly feels this matter cannot wait. The Highland envoys arrive in 3 nights' time, not 4, as previously stated. Their message arrived this evening, requesting an earlier audience. This alteration of plans was troubling. Seraphine had counted on those 4 nights to secure Eveline's escape. Furthermore, Countess Helena added, with barely concealed satisfaction, they specifically wish to discuss rumors they have heard. Rumors of a mortal woman harbored within Fortress Valdor, carrying an offspring of unusual lineage. Seraphine's blood ran cold, though her expression remained impassive. How could the Highland clans know of Eveline? More importantly, how could they suspect the truth about her infant? Rumors spread faster than plague among our kind, she observed calmly. But very well, I will meet with the envoys when they arrive. Until then, the woman remains under my personal guard. The Assembly must insist, Count Dominic began. The Assembly serves at my pleasure, Seraphine interrupted, her voice carrying the full weight of her royal authority. The temperature in the chamber dropped suddenly, frost forming on the goblets before them. Do not forget your place, Count. I am not merely Marcus's widow. I am queen in my own right, by blood and by conquest. The ancient vampire inclined his head, properly chastised. Of course, my lady. We seek only to protect the realm's interests. As do I. Seraphine rose, signaling the end of the meeting. If there is a traitor in our midst, rest assured they will be found, and their punishment will serve as a reminder of what happens to those who betray the throne of Valdor. As she swept from the chamber, Seraphine's mind worked furiously. The Assembly's sudden interest in Eveline and the accelerated arrival of the Highland envoys could not be coincidence. Someone had discovered the prophecy, or at least suspected its potential fulfillment. She needed to move Eveline immediately before the Assembly could act. But where? The fortress was full of spies, and the surrounding territories would soon be watched by agents of both the Assembly and the Highland clans. As she rounded the corner toward her private chambers, Celeste appeared suddenly from the shadows. "My lady," the ancient physician whispered urgently. "Come quickly. It's the mortal woman. Something is happening." Seraphine followed Celeste at vampiric speed, reaching Eveline's chambers in seconds. Inside, they found the mortal woman doubled over in discomfort, clutching her swollen abdomen. "The infant comes," Celeste explained, helping Eveline back to the bed, far earlier than expected. "That's not possible," Eveline gasped between waves of pain. "It's too soon." Seraphine exchanged a significant look with Celeste. Both understood what this meant. The vampire blood in the infant was accelerating its development, a common trait among hybrid births. "The offspring of prophecy will not wait for convenient timing," Celeste murmured too quietly for Eveline to hear. Seraphine made a swift decision. "Prepare for the birth here. Post guards you trust personally. No one enters without my explicit permission." She turned to leave. "Where are you going?" Eveline called out, panic in her voice. Seraphine paused at the doorway. "To ensure your safety and that of your infant, there are preparations I must make immediately." The Assembly would expect her to attend to her royal duties despite this development. That would give her the cover needed to implement her plan. The offspring of 2 thrones would be born this night, and by dawn, both mother and infant would need to be far from Fortress Valdor. As she closed the door behind her, Seraphine whispered a promise that echoed Marcus's final act. "I will protect what you sought to save, my beloved, no matter the cost." The fortress stirred with whispers as Seraphine swept through its shadowed corridors. Servants and guards alike sensed the tension in the atmosphere, the electric anticipation of momentous events unfolding. None dared question their queen as she issued rapid commands, her amber eyes ablaze with purpose. In her private armory, Seraphine selected weapons with care, a slender platinum sword enchanted centuries ago to slice through both flesh and magic, and a set of ancient daggers whose hilts bore the Valdor crest. She dressed for battle in close-fitting garments of ebony leather and silk, attaching a hooded cloak lined with midnight velvet. Tonight, stealth would matter more than royal pageantry. As she secured the final weapon, a vial of her own blood potent enough to heal mortal wounds, Lucien appeared at the doorway. "My lady," he bowed deeply. "The preparations are complete as ordered. The passage beneath the southern wall has been cleared and trusted guards posted at intervals. The carriage waits in the forest clearing, with supplies sufficient for a month's journey." Seraphine nodded approval. "And the documents?" "Prepared as instructed," Lucien confirmed. "Royal writs of safe passage bearing your seal, and letters of introduction to the Southern Alliance. Lady Ravenna will honor your request for sanctuary." The Southern Alliance, a separatist faction of vampires who had broken from the main assembly centuries ago, establishing territories beyond the mountains where they practiced a different relationship with humans. They would protect Eveline and her infant if she could get them there. "And the assembly?" Seraphine asked, fastening her cloak. Lucien's expression darkened. "They meet secretly in the West Tower. Countess Helena has received additional communications from the Highland envoys. They arrive before midnight, hours earlier than announced." "So they mean to trap us," Seraphine murmured. The game accelerates. A distant bell tolled 10 times, 2 hours until midnight. The birth had begun at sunset. By Celeste's estimation, the infant would arrive before the moon reached its zenith. Seraphine needed to move them immediately after, while the assembly remained occupied with preparations for the Highland delegation. "Return to the assembly," she instructed Lucien. "Tell them I am performing the ritual of blood communion in preparation for the envoy's arrival and cannot be disturbed. It will buy us time." As Lucien departed, Seraphine made one final stop. In her throne chamber, she approached the imposing portrait of Marcus that hung behind the royal dais. His painted eyes seemed to follow her, dark burgundy, intense, and knowing. "Guide me, my beloved," she whispered, pressing her palm against the canvas. The portrait swung silently inward, revealing a hidden compartment. Within lay a small wooden box, intricately carved with protective runes. She took it reverently, securing it within her cloak before resealing the portrait. When Seraphine returned to Eveline's chambers, she found the scene transformed. The chamber glowed with candlelight, the atmosphere heavy with the scent of birth and blood. Celeste moved efficiently between various potions and cloths, her ancient hands steady as she attended to Eveline, who lay propped against pillows, her face flushed with exertion. "The infant comes quickly," Celeste reported. "Faster than any mortal birth I've witnessed." Eveline reached out, grasping Seraphine's hand with surprising strength. "Something's wrong," she gasped between contractions. It can't be happening this soon." Seraphine clasped the mortal woman's hand, feeling an unexpected surge of compassion. "Your infant is special, Eveline. Different, but I swear on Marcus's memory, I will ensure both of you survive this night." Another contraction seized Eveline, more powerful than before. She cried out, her body arching with the force of it. "The head emerges," Celeste announced. "Push now, child." What followed was a blur of intensity. Eveline's determined efforts, Celeste's calm guidance, and finally the unmistakable cry of newborn life filling the chamber, a sound both ordinary and miraculous. "A daughter," Celeste proclaimed, wrapping the infant in clean linens, strong and perfect. As the ancient physician placed the newborn in Eveline's trembling arms, Seraphine stepped closer, her immortal eyes taking in every detail of the infant. The infant looked human in almost every respect. Pink skin, a wisp of auburn hair like her mother's, tiny fists clenched against the shock of the world. But her eyes, when they fluttered open briefly, revealed a hint of something other, a flash of copper around the pupils, reminiscent of vampire sight. "She's beautiful," Eveline whispered, tears streaming down her face. "She looks like—" A sudden commotion outside the door interrupted her words. The sound of steel against steel, followed by a guard's warning shout cut short by a wet gurgling sound. "They've come!" Seraphine hissed, drawing her sword in one fluid motion. Earlier than expected, the door burst open, revealing Count Dominic flanked by elite vampire guards. Blood stained their lips and chins. They had fed recently, preparing for battle. "Forgive the intrusion, my lady." Dominic's voice dripped with false courtesy. "The assembly has voted. The mortal and her abomination must be destroyed before the Highland envoys arrive for the security of our realm." Seraphine positioned herself between the intruders and the bed. "You overstep, Count. This woman and infant are under my protection." Dominic's ancient face showed no emotion. "The assembly suspected you, might be compromised, perhaps affected by the same madness that overtook Marcus in his final days. His fascination with prophecies and mortal potential clouded his judgment, led him to betray his own kind." "You knew," Seraphine realized, pieces falling into place. "You knew what Marcus had discovered in the ancient texts. You arranged his passing, a regrettable necessity," Dominic admitted. "The old ways must be preserved. Our kind cannot evolve beyond what we are. Predators, superior to the mortals we feed upon. This infant represents a threat to that natural order." With a flick of his wrist, he signaled the guards to advance. "Step aside, Queen Seraphine. Fulfill your duty to our race." In answer, Seraphine's sword flashed in the candlelight, slicing through the throat of the nearest guard. Ebony blood splattered across the stone floor as the vampire collapsed, clutching the wound that even his immortal healing could not immediately close. "I know my duty," Seraphine snarled, her fangs extending fully as battle rage took hold, "to protect what is mine." What followed was a dance of mortality and shadow. Seraphine moved with the supernatural grace of her kind, her platinum blade singing through the atmosphere as she engaged 4 guards simultaneously. Behind her, Celeste pulled Eveline and the newborn toward a concealed door in the chamber's far wall. Count Dominic remained in the doorway, his ancient power gathering like a storm. Unlike younger vampires, the patriarchs possessed magical abilities beyond mere physical strength. His eyes blazed crimson as he extended his hand, a bolt of dark energy streaking towards Seraphine. She deflected it with her blade, the enchanted platinum absorbing the magic with a hiss of steam. The momentary distraction cost her as one guard's sword sliced her shoulder. Pain flared, but she ignored it, decapitating the attacker with a sweeping blow. "Celeste, now!" Seraphine shouted, engaging the remaining guards to buy time. The ancient physician pushed against a section of wall, revealing a narrow passage. "This way," she urged Eveline, who clutched her newborn tightly against her chest. Count Dominic noticed their escape attempt and snarled, unleashing another blast of power that shattered furniture and scorched the stone walls. Seraphine threw herself into its path, the magical impact sending her crashing into a heavy wardrobe. Dazed but determined, she regained her footing in time to see Dominic advancing toward Eveline and the infant. With vampiric speed, Seraphine retrieved one of her daggers and hurled it with deadly accuracy. The blade embedded itself in Dominic's back, piercing where his heart would be. The ancient vampire staggered but did not fall. He turned slowly, a smile twisting his bloodless lips. "Did you forget, my lady? The assembly members took precautions centuries ago. Our hearts no longer reside within our bodies." From within his robes, he produced a small object wrapped in cloth, a crystal, vial containing a blackened, still beating heart. "You cannot kill what is already beyond mortality." Seraphine's eyes narrowed. "Perhaps not, but I can still ensure you fail." With a sudden gesture, she called upon her bloodline's power. The temperature in the chamber plummeted instantly, frost spreading across the floors and walls. The remaining guards froze in place, ice encasing their limbs. Count Dominic alone remained mobile, though frost crystals formed on his ancient skin. "Get them to safety," Seraphine commanded Celeste, never taking her eyes off Dominic. "I will join you at the rendezvous point." "But my lady," Celeste began. "Go," Seraphine ordered. The prophecy must be fulfilled. As Eveline and Celeste disappeared into the passage with the infant, Dominic laughed coldly. You sacrifice your throne for a mortal woman and her half-breed offspring. Marcus's weakness has infected you after all. Not weakness, Seraphine countered, circling him like a predator. Evolution. Our kind has existed in stagnation for millennia. The endless cycle of hunger and feeding. What has it brought us but isolation and fear? Marcus saw another path. Sentimentality, Dominic spat. We are apex predators. That is our nature and our strength. Then why fear change? Seraphine challenged. If our position is so secure. Instead of answering, Dominic attacked, centuries of dark magic fueling his assault. The chamber erupted with shadowy energy as the two ancient vampires engaged in combat beyond mortal comprehension. Furniture splintered, stone cracked, and the very atmosphere seemed to warp around them. Seraphine fought with the ferocity of a queen defending her legacy. Each blow she landed weakened Dominic's defenses. Each spell she countered diminished his power. But he was ancient, cunning, and prepared for this confrontation. As their battle reached its peak, Dominic revealed his final weapon, a blade of obsidian crystal that glowed with sickly emerald light. Deathstone, Seraphine, whispered, recognizing the rare material that could permanently kill even the oldest vampires. You came prepared for regicide. The assembly always prepares for every contingency, Dominic replied, advancing with the deadly blade. Your reign ends tonight, one way or another. Their final clash shook the very foundations of the fortress. Seraphine's platinum sword met the Deathstone blade in a shower of sparks and magical energy. For a moment, they stood locked in combat, immortal strength against immortal strength. Then Seraphine smiled, a cold, dangerous expression that gave even Dominic pause. You forget, Count, she said softly. I was queen before I was Marcus's wife. I earned my crown through blood and victory alone. With a movement too swift for even vampire eyes to follow, she released her sword with one hand, reaching instead for the wooden box concealed within her cloak. It opened at her touch, revealing a crystalline heart. Dominic's own, removed centuries ago and replaced, with the decoy he carried. Looking for this? She asked, squeezing the preserved organ. Pain contorted Dominic's features as he staggered backward. How? Marcus and I ruled for 800 years, Seraphine replied, maintaining her grip on the heart. Did you truly believe we did not know where each assembly member hid their weakness? With a final surge of strength, Seraphine drove her platinum sword through Dominic's chest while simultaneously crushing the crystalline heart in her hand. The ancient vampire's body crumbled to ash, his centuries of existence ending in a silent implosion of dark energy. Wasting no time, Seraphine sheathed her weapon and raced through the secret passage, following the path Celeste and Eveline had taken. The fortress was now in chaos, alarms ringing as guards discovered the battle scene. She had minutes at most before the remaining assembly members mobilized their full forces. At the southern wall's foundation, a narrow tunnel led beneath the playing fortress moat and emerged in the forest beyond. Seraphine found Celeste waiting with Eveline and the infant in an ebony carriage, its horses stamping impatiently. The Highland envoys have breached the outer gates, Celeste reported as Seraphine approached. The assembly will tell them everything. Seraphine nodded, turning to Eveline, who sat pale but determined, cradling her newborn daughter. The road ahead is dangerous, she warned the mortal woman. They will hunt you relentlessly. Why are you assisting us? Eveline asked, her jade eyes searching Seraphine's amber ones. You could have sided with your assembly, preserved your throne. Seraphine's gaze shifted to the infant, who stared back with eyes that held a hint of both worlds, mortal and vampire. Because Marcus saw hope in this infant, a future where our kinds might coexist without predation or fear, I choose to honor that vision. From around her neck, Seraphine removed the sapphire amulet she had worn since her coronation, the sapphire symbol of Valdor sovereignty. She placed it gently around the infant's neck, the ancient jewel seeming to pulse with inner light as it touched the infant's skin. She is the bridge between realms, Seraphine said softly. The offspring of two thrones, mortal and immortal. Protect her. Teach her both sides of her heritage. When she comes of age, she will understand her purpose. Celeste climbed into the driver's seat, taking the reins. "The Southern Alliance will shelter them," she assured Seraphine. "Ravenna honors the old alliances." "And you, my lady?" Eveline asked. "Will you not come with us?" Seraphine shook her head, her silver hair catching the moonlight. "My place is here. Someone must face what comes and ensure the assembly cannot follow your trail." Her expression softened slightly. "Besides, a queen does not abandon her throne so easily. There are loyal vampires who will stand with me when they learn the truth." As distant shouts signaled the approaching forces, Seraphine stepped back from the carriage. "Go now. Do not stop until you reach the mountains. Travel only by night until then." Celeste nodded, snapping the reins. As the carriage disappeared into the forest shadows, Seraphine turned to face her fortress, now illuminated by torches as search parties spread across the grounds. The ancient prophecy had begun its fulfillment. The infant lived and would grow under the protection of those who understood her significance. Marcus's vision would continue, though he had not lived to see it. Seraphine drew her sword once more, its platinum blade catching the light of the blood moon that now hung full in the sky, an omen of change that even the most skeptical vampire could not ignore. "For you, my beloved," she whispered to Marcus's memory. "The legacy continues." With vampiric speed, she raced back toward the fortress to confront those who had betrayed her husband and sought to destroy the future he had perished protecting. The night would be long and the battle fierce. But for the first time since Marcus's passing, Queen Seraphine of Valdor felt something she had thought lost forever. Hope for a future beyond endless hunger and isolation. A future where the offspring of two thrones might someday return to unite the abyss between realms. The ancient blood would find a new path forward, and she would ensure that path remained open, whatever the cost. If you enjoyed the story, subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and tell us what impressed you most about it. Turn on notifications to always receive updates on future videos.